Go with day one of the actual work. We got this car last week. It's a present for the owner's wife. It's actually the wife's car. She's had it for 30 years, and they've been restoring it. Some of the best restoration shops in San Diego, and everybody's jerked them around. Done a little bit of work here, a little bit of work there, and the whole car's been disrespected. So it's like throwing a bunch of musicians into a room and saying make a symphony without having a conductor there or any communications amongst each other or any working together. So we've got the interior is actually halfway decent. That's one thing that we have good in San Diego is upholstery work. Autos International did this upholstery. I've never seen the car before last week. The wire harness was replaced, and they ran it through this hole right here, which is the speedometer cable hole. Throttle cable was wrapped around like 5 different things in there. It was like staking through stuff that was no good. Oil cooler's leaking everywhere. First off, I'm seeing there's excessive sealant like gooping out of everywhere, and you don't use that sealant on the transmissions, but if you go up in here, they glued the push rod tube seals. They glued the case through bolt, which is fine, I glue those, but I never glue the push rod tube seals. It's not needed. Oil everywhere, and then the fuel pump is leaking oil everywhere, and if you look at the fuel pump, they glued the fuel pump to the case, and that's not a sealing surface. The sealing surface is on the O-ring. This is the typical stuff that we run into where this official Porsche shop did all this work to this car, charged them a fortune, then told them we can't put it in because we're, I don't know, lost our mechanics or going out of business or something like that. But now I gotta take the motor back out and take the fan shroud off and change the oil cooler. This car had this huge leak, and we bought a new oil cooler. See, the overnight, all that other stuff. And look, I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's a big screwdriver hole inside this seal. Some nudnik jammed a screwdriver underneath the frickin'. I told you this engine would be a problem right from the beginning. I mean, it was doomed to fail. The oil cooler just pissed oil out the side of the engine as soon as it was fired up. But even we got into the valve covers, and the valve cover seals weren't even installed properly. But that didn't even get to the biggest problem I had, was exhaust leaks. Exhaust leaks are one of those things that plague old Porsches at certain times. When you got an old Porsche you're putting back on the road, sometimes the exhaust just leaks and leaks and leaks. And usually it's from rusted, worn out, just old metal, and the flanges and stuff that, like on a 912, the tailpipe goes in a slip fit, and the fit gets wider, and this pipe gets rusty and smaller and pitted, and you get this exhaust leak stuff. Also, when you got a cylinder head and the exhaust flange goes right up to it, sometimes the exhaust flange is warped and you get this gap in between the exhaust flange and the sealing surface, and you get this pop, 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 pop. I'm experiencing that in this car right now, and I just want to show you guys how to identify it and what to do to fix that, because it's a major problem. This is somebody else's motor. I just threw it in this car. I don't know what they did to prep the exhaust, but it's all old. The muffler is actually brand new, but that doesn't mean it's great. It's the fitting of the J-tubes that go into that are horrible, and it seems like they maybe put a gasket in improperly on the muffler, because it's got a tick. I'll show you. We're gonna start it up right now. It's dead cold. Oop, pop, pop, pop. That's not the exhaust noise, but so you'll hear. I'll put the microphone out. Why is it this bad? See, there it picks up finally.
If you listen really closely and you have that train 912 ear, you can hear there's exhaust coming out the tailpipe tip, but there's also an exhaust leak coming out of the exhaust before the muffler, and it's almost like a little tick. It's a little annoying. And one of the symptoms with exhaust leaks is the ticking in the exhaust, but when you're driving around, if you get backfires, like you take your foot off the gas and you're decelerating in gear, and it's like a shotgun blast, boom, 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 something like that, then you've got an exhaust leak, and what's happening is you're sucking fresh air into the exhaust, and the little bits of fuel that's left over is combining with that oxygen, relighting, and that's where you get that backfire that's happening. It's just an exhaust leak, and you're getting fresh air into the exhaust. That's the problem. Still a lot of tuning on this motor.
If you come down here, one of the quickest indicators that your exhaust is leaking is that black soot coming out. And while I don't recommend it, if you can put your hand near it, right where my hand is right now, without touching the hot exhaust, I just feel pulses of exhaust shooting out here. There's a ton of exhaust coming out right here. And what it is this pipe is just rusted and been crunched enough times. And maybe this bracket right here, which is also rusty, if you can see that, they're just all not working together. And so what I do is I'll cut the ends of these off and weld a new pipe on the end of it. You can replace the whole thing, but I find that's not necessary most of the time. If you listen closely, you can really hear that tick. And this car backfires so bad, I'm thinking that there's two exhaust leaks. So let's go around to the other side. Exhaust leaks should not be mistaken for the actual exhaust, because if you hear right here, it's got a pleasant exhaust noise. That's real combustion. That's after the muffler, and it sounds proper. It's not like a high-pitched chirp noise. Like down here. Again, I can feel the exhaust pulses coming out by putting my hand downwind. You can clearly see the soot coming out with the exhaust leak. So this side is not crimping either. I've been through this so many times. The metal, the little flange right there, these little flange areas have a tendency to stick themselves underneath the muffler, the tailpipe. Yeah, that one's leaking out the bolt hole. There's also leaks right here, but that's kind of common. We'll just say it's aftermarket without saying the brand, right? The weld too big. I see daylight underneath the nut. Ooh yeah, I wonder if that's even tight. It's a 12 millimeter. Try tightening it first. No. Well, that's the reason why it's leaking. On top of everything else. I mean, the motor was assembled and given to us, so we're not necessarily supposed to take it all apart. Yeah. Let me get these flanges real quick. Yeah, that one was leaking for sure. Ooh, yeah, that was leaking. That's the reason why it was a ticking. You'd think a exhaust manufacturer could put exhaust paint on, not this crap. Look at it. The wipes right off, and it turns pink for some reason. It's awful. If you see there's metal flange right there, what you want to do is get a screwdriver and shove that in right there.
Yeah.
And there's actually room behind the flange. You get all the metal behind the flange.
Yeah.
As long as it stays there, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
It won't push out. See the loss of gasket material on the metal. It's all blown out. So even if we just tighten that nut, it wouldn't have fixed the exhaust leak. On this side, you got a flathead right around here. You see what I do with this flathead, and you just get that in there. That can fix that, but over here, we want to grind that off. That little nub right there, that's the culprit. And you see how close it is to the flange right there. And so this thing's some corrosion and stuff on that. It's not the greatest. But we can work with fresh flanges on the other side and a new gasket, but we need to get rid of that little bit right there. And that's a lot better to get off when we're building the motor. That whole piece of metal right there is higher than the flange is. Wonder about
Flange was sitting on top of it.
whatever you can do to grind that away, just not
Yeah.
touching the flange
Yeah, of course.
the aluminum,
Yeah.
the cylinder head.
Yeah, the gasket's totally wasted too.
Yeah, that gasket's wasted. So what happened is whoever put this motor together, they probably put the motor together right, and then as they added things on, they just half-assed it more and more and more and forgot and thought they'd do it later. But same thing, so right here, on all 4 exhaust flanges, and it really saves you a lot of time in the future.
Don't forget to join my Patreon.
Now I just want to talk about aftermarket mufflers really quick. First off, this tailpipe. They should have a jog in them that jogs down a little bit, and it just changes the angle of the tip. And this one, I can't set it right to where it needs to be. So this is an original tailpipe, and if you look real carefully, there's a slight little jog down, like it's going straight here, and then it starts jogging down right about here.
And that's what you get when you use Aftermarket. And while this is a high quality aftermarket company, it's got a myriad of problems and fitment issues.
The other thing I see with this muffler that is a major issue is the welds here. Can you see the problem? This one actually had exhaust leaking from the hole for the exhaust stud, which is a new one by me. But if you look, there's some welding slag and overrun, and it's so close to the hole that the nut's gonna have interference there. I mean, it's on the hole right there at the very end. And over here, it's not much better.
What you want to do with your aftermarket muffler is check those flanges and grind away any of that welding overlay, that excess welding that they put on. Grind it back so you have a flat spot for your nut to turn onto. And sandblast the entire muffler and paint it with some good quality exhaust paint that can handle 1500 degrees, something like that. Because the exhaust paint that they use, it's awful.
That's a lot of work.
Do you get the muffler?
Yeah.
Slowly file it. It's tight here, And as you file away, you're bringing this part down to flat.
It takes a lot of filing. And slowly
Get to be like that one right there. This takes a long time. All right, so I'm road testing the silver 66 912. I never want to work on a car where like 3-4 shops put different things together, and then it comes as a package of it. All it needs to do is be put together. That's it. That's all it needs. The problems we found on this car: the leaking oil cooler seal. It's got an exhaust leak that still isn't gone. The exhaust leak, first off, the aftermarket muffler that was on the car, it wasn't tight. Once we tightened it, it still leaked, and so it didn't fit very well. So there's just some leaks in that system. I put one of my original mufflers on it, and I filed every flange down, put brand new clamps on, and it's still leaking exhaust. And the only way to fix that is probably to pull the motor, take everything off of the cylinder head, the exhaust studs, and file that plane down, that port that holds the exhaust extractor on. And then it'll finally have a fresh mating surface that it could seal. But the motor needs to come back out of the car to do that. I can't do it with the motor in the car. And taking the exhaust studs out of a head, you're running a 75% chance that they're gonna break. They're not just gonna spin out. Then, once you have a broken stud and an exhaust, you have to drill or EDM out the leftover material, and that's really difficult in the 912 head. There's just not much room to work with when you got a broken stud. And we gotta kind of expect that you're gonna have a broken stud if we're pulling the exhaust studs. But that's what needs to be done to get rid of the exhaust leak. There were so many problems with this motor. It had the wrong distributor. The carburetors weren't rebuilt or put together, or they weren't even touched. Someone broke the studs off for the heater valves. We had to fix that. There's so many problems.